to Gamecock Pod Live.
For the next 3 to 4 years, I'll be committed to the University of Gamecock.
This is Rogers again to the 25, 20, 15, 10. Rogers scores! Ball to Bennett, Jackie Bradley Jr. delivered for the Gamecocks. Lost it up, looking for Kelly. Touchdown! Can you believe it?
And South Carolina is sending shockwaves through the SEC.
Frederick plays it in at the buzzer. That's a win! Unbelievable! I don't believe it!
And now, live from Studio 54 of the Gamecock Pod Studios, here's the Cockfather himself, Keith Allsep.
All right, everybody, welcome into Gamecock Pod Live. It is Cocktober. Today is October the 1st. It is episode number 1863 of Gamecock Pod Live and Gamecock Pod Daily. I am your host, Keith Allsep. Get in the comments, let me know if you can hear me. I know we've been having an issue the last few weeks with our guest as far as some rattling or echoing or things like that going on. And so I've gone back to the old microphone and the headset. So hopefully that will help out. We've got a great show lined up for you today. In just a few minutes, we will be joined by Alex Jones from thebigspur.com. We'll be talking about South Carolina's 35-13 win over Big Blue Nation. Well, after 4 straight, I think we can call them the Smurfs. Yep, a little stipsy. Shane Beamer 4 in a row over Big Blue Nation. And the 2021 game, South Carolina snatched defeat from the jaws of victory in that one. Defense did everything they could. And, well, as we all know, shat happens. And they couldn't score any points. Wouldn't kick field goals. Kept going for it on 4th down. All right, let me tell you about my good friend, Chris Payne at Nana's Porch. Today's sponsor, Nana's Porch, is the award-winning full-service catering company servicing the greater Charlotte area. Nana's Porch is your go-to for all your catering needs, whether it's a banquet, a wedding, a corporate event, a birthday or anniversary celebration. Maybe it's a rehearsal dinner. Maybe it's a celebration for a Little League team or whatever the occasion, Nana's Porch has got you covered. So go to the homepage, nanasporch.com. That's NANASPORCH.com. There we go. Get in touch with my good friend, Chris Payne. Tell him the Cockfather sent you. And you can also support this Gamecock-owned and operated business by going to nanasporch.com and clicking on pimento cheese in the top right-hand portion of the home page. You can order Nana's Porch award-winning pimento cheese. It's reasonably priced. You've got both award-winning flavors in the smoky jalapeno and the great regular flavor, affordably priced. Checkout is simple, safe, and secure. There have been some changes to shipping costs due to inflation and some of the policies that have been implemented by the current administration. And so if you want to get the most bang for your buck, order 4 containers of Nana's Porch pimento cheese. You can order 2 smoky jalapenos, 2 of the great regular flavor. If you've had it many times before, you can order 3 and 1, or you can just push all your chips into the middle and go for all 4 for your favorite flavor. But they'll ship it right to your front doorstep. Southern Foods, you'll love it. I guarantee it. Nana's Porch, award-winning pimento cheese, and your go-to for all your catering needs in the greater Charlotte-Fort Mill area. All right, let's get to some news, notes, and headlines, which is now a little more difficult that I'm talking into this microphone. All right, so Brian Thomas Jr. was named the SEC's co-defensive player of the week for his performance in South Carolina's 35-13 win over Kentucky. The 6'2", 250-pound senior from Florida was credited with a game high and a career high 7 tackles, including 5 solo tackles and 2 of the Gamecocks' 6 sacks in the win over Kentucky, and he added a quarterback hurry. South Carolina's defense surrendered just 232 yards on the night, including just 91 yards on Kentucky's final 9 drives. Thomas becomes the 3rd Gamecock to be recognized by the SEC this season, joining Fred Johnson, who's been co-defensive player of the week and 2-time co-special teams player of the week, Bakari Swain. Of course, the Gamecocks will have open date this week. Clemson lost 28-17 to their open date. Cade Klubnik threw 3 interceptions in that loss. All right, when the Gamecocks do take the field the next time, it will be to take on LSU and the Tigers, and that will be a night game. It will either be 7 p.m. on ESPN, 7:30 on ABC, or 7:45 on the SEC network. That will be announced on Monday. All right, Luke Doty, congratulations to him. He has been named to the Jason Witten Collegiate Man of the Year watch list. Jason Witten, probably my favorite Tennessee Vol, because I got to coach against him when he was in high school there at Elizabethton in upper northeast Tennessee. We put it on him pretty good, but he was really good just coming off his senior football season. Elizabethton, probably my favorite town in Tennessee, just because of the golf course. It's probably one of the most beautiful places I've ever actually played golf. I have been to Augusta, but did not play there. But Luke Doty, one of 67 of the nation's top leaders in college football, nominated for the 9th annual Jason Witten Collegiate Man of the Year Award. Nominated by their schools, the members of the watch list have all demonstrated a record of leadership by exhibiting exceptional courage, integrity, and sportsmanship, both on and off the field. Last year, J.J. Weaver of Kentucky won the award. 20 semifinalists will be selected by a subset of the committee and announced on Tuesday, October 14th, then 3 finalists on December 15th, and the winner will be honored at a ceremony at the Star in Frisco, Texas, right outside of Dallas on April the 16th of 2026. And last night, Asia Wilson led the Las Vegas Aces back to the finals. 35 points, 8 rebounds, 5 assists, 4 steals, 4 blocks. She's the only player in WNBA history to have multiple 35-point games. And she and Chelsea Gray became the first teammates in WNBA history to both score over 30 points in multiple series deciding games. And so it was Asia Wilson against Aaliyah Boston, and Aaliyah Boston got hosed by the officials. They took her out of there, and despite not having a certain player on their team, well, actually 2 certain players, Sophie Cunningham's one of them, the other one's Caitlin Clark, they took that game to overtime, and Aaliyah Boston had fouled out. And so watch out for the Fever. They are coming. Stephanie White doing a great job. Breezy Hall on that team as well. But I really thought Aaliyah Boston kind of got hosed. I'll have more thoughts on that a little bit later. And at some point today, one of South Carolina's top targets, McKenna Releasco, out of Mitty High School in California, is expected to announce between South Carolina, Iowa, I think that's it. Southern Cal and Ohio State are also listed. A lot of crystal balls for Iowa. I thought this thing was supposed to happen at 8 o'clock Central Time. It's now 9:13 Central Time. And, well, we're still waiting. So it sounds like there could be, I don't know, maybe it's a delay. Maybe it's building drama. If I had to say, I would guess that she does not end up choosing South Carolina, but that's just a guess on my part. So let's go out to the guest line and let's bring in the man from the Big Spur. We'd never know where he's from. Got the old virtual background going there. Alex, welcome in. How's it going? And are you enjoying the open date? No Shane Beamer yesterday, no coordinators today. Are you sleeping in? Are you catching up on your favorite Netflix shows? What's going on?
Yeah, just finding stuff to write about, but it can be nice to not have this bye week where nowhere to be from a football standpoint. But it'll be interesting to get back into it next week with LSU, because it's pretty important stretch for South Carolina, one that's looking like it's going to be a top 15 stretch of teams they're going to have to play.
All right, well, let's talk about that for a second. Beginning on Saturday. Next Saturday, October the 11th, number 13 LSU at night in the real Death Valley. We all know Death Valley Jr. now and the real Death Valley. Even though it is angry Brian Kelly face after losing to Ole Miss. Then number 5, Oklahoma. They may not be number 5. John Mateer is out for a month with a broken right wrist, which is problematic when you're a right-handed quarterback. Then homecoming, which I will be in attendance. Gamecocks. Oh, by the way, LSU at night. Oklahoma, a noon home game. Of course, the Gamecocks didn't have any problem at 11 a.m. last year in Norman against the Sooners. Alabama is a flex. It could be 3:30. It could be, well, I doubt it'll be 4:15 on the SEC network, but probably 3:30, 7 or 7:30 would be my guess. What's your thoughts on that?
For the Alabama game, you said? Yeah. I think probably kind of depends on, what this happens here these next few weeks with both South Carolina and Alabama. But, it's been, South Carolina's had a whole bunch of night games here recently. So, to be honest, wouldn't mind a 3:30 game, not have to get out of the press box at 1:15 in the morning. But, I wouldn't be surprised if it moves to a 7:30 game, depending on how these weeks goes. But I'll guess 3:30 for that one.
I agree. That sounds about right. 3:30 on ABC.
Yeah.
All right, then November 1st, Ole Miss, Lane Kiffin. They put it on Brian Kelly and the Tigers. They are number 4 in the nation. And then you get another open date, and November the 15th, you play currently number 6, Texas A&M. So currently, the next 5 games, and some not in order, but you're facing number 4, 5, 6, 10, and 13. And, I don't know what's going on with Garrett Nussmeier, but Hale McGranahan did put up some video of him throwing last year versus this year. We know he's had the knee tendonitis, but it just looks a lot different, Alex.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I kind of thought that offense would be humming this year just because of what they have back from a receiver standpoint, with Nussmeier and also with the running back. I think the running back, we'll see with him too. Their running game just hasn't been as good for LSU. I think if Nussmeier is going to have the issues that he's going to have, that looks like he may be having, you're going to need that running game to get going. But I wondered with LSU, just because up front they lost just about everybody. I mean, you lost those top guys who are draft picks. So I was wondering what that run game is going to look like, and they struggled. But on the flip side, that the defense has taken a huge step forward for LSU, and Blake Baker's a really good defensive coordinator, and I think they've taken a big step forward there. So could next week in Death Valley be a low scoring game? It's possible. It's going to be interesting to see what could happen. But I'm interested that matchup of this one's going to be interesting to watch, just for LSU's offense versus Carolina's defense, because I think, after those first 2 drives for Carolina against Kentucky, they really kind of figured it out and really were playing their best football defensively. And I know that, the competition with Cutter Boldy, like, they really got to him and kind of rattled him early on and really made Kentucky one-dimensional. But, I think the defense for South Carolina is taking a step forward. And we'll see with Nussmeier. It does seem like he's not the same that he was last year, just from a mechanical standpoint, watching him throw the ball.
I mean, I agree. Everybody was concerned. A lot of people were picking Clemson over LSU. Clemson, I think, was favored in that game because, LSU's lost 4 starters off their offensive line. They're going to struggle. Clemson, everybody had Cade Klubnik for whatever reason as a Heisman favorite, the number 1 draft pick. That vaunted Clemson defense. Well, we figured out Clemson defense is not quite as good as we thought. They couldn't stop LSU in the second half, despite Dabo saying, he'd give LSU a 65 and Clemson a 58. Brian Kelly's like, man, did you not watch the second half of that game? We completely dominated you on your home field. But then Clemson against Troy, they trailed at the half in that one. Troy's coach completely set back college football 100 years with his clock management in that one.
Yeah.
And then, as we all know, they lost to Georgia Tech, the Humble Bumbles, with the 56-yard walk-off field goal. Andy Demetra, I was actually on the road listening to him make that call. It was awesome. Mm-hmm. He didn't struggle for the words on Scoop and Score like Todd Ellis did a couple weeks ago. Well, last week. It took Todd about 40 seconds for somebody to whisper in his ear, Todd, it's a Scoop and Score. But we love Todd. He's a Gamecock. He's a homer. Yep, Gamecock quarterback. And then, of course, Syracuse absolutely obliterated Clemson. And then Cade Klubnik picked off 4 times in a 28-17 loss to Open Date this past week. And
I'm interested to see that game this week in Clemson and North Carolina. Like, I don't think North Carolina is all that great. Obviously, with they haven't beaten anybody and got beat really badly by TCU at home. But I'm interested to see that just because it's 2 teams that badly need to win.
All right, so Kentucky was up 10-2 going into 10-7 going into the second quarter, and then the wheels just fell off.
Mm-hmm.
Sack, Scoop and Score. I know Todd struggled for the words, but that's what it was. Then on the next possession, on 2nd and 9, pick 6, Gerald Kilgore. That made it 21-10. And then on Kentucky's next possession, turnover on downs. Then their next possession, interception by Brandon Cisse. Carolina starts at the Kentucky 43. They go in and score, make it 28-10. And then on the last play of the half, Kentucky tried we'll throw it downfield and then we'll try to lateral it about 25 times and see what can happen. And Dylan Stewart absolutely gollywopped a guy, and Jalen Kilgore recovered a fumble. So 5 possessions for Kentucky in the second quarter, all turnovers. And, that was basically it. I mean, South Carolina's offense, let's don't get it twisted. It wasn't something to write home about, but there was good LaNorris Sellers, and there was really good Vandrevis Jacobs, who is he emerging as the number 1 receiver after 2 consecutive 100-yard receiving games?
It kind of seems like it. It seems like him and Nick Harbor are right up there 1 and 2 for LaNorris Sellers. I mean, been really impressed with Dre Jacobs. He's, obviously has worked. Shane Beamer kind of talked about this post game of how hard he's worked, and he was even a captain too for that game, which shows just kind of the respect he has from the teammates and the coaching staff too. So he's one that he had 5 receptions the other night. That was only receiver that had more than 1. So I mean, you saw the flashes of it last year, especially early on. I remember that Old Dominion game had a good game, and some of those other early games he kind of flashed. Then I think kind of battled some injuries there and never got back going, but he's been really good so far, and a guy that he kind of showed off his acceleration and explosion on that 59-yard pass. I mean, he started running past those Kentucky defenders, so that was a really good sign for South Carolina, because I mean, now you're starting to see, you needed somebody else other than what we saw from Nick Harbor early on, and you're also starting to see those freshmen, those 2 specifically with Donovan Murph and Brian Rowe. Those 2 are starting to get more and more comfortable, and I mean, Rowe's starting now in that slot, so I think you're starting to see some targets there, which is something that beginning of the season we talked about needed to happen for South Carolina offensively. And to the point on LaNorris Sellers, like it seems like when you watch them, especially as that game progressed, like he got back to the 2024 LaNorris Sellers and even that Virginia Tech LaNorris Sellers, where you saw him at the end of that Virginia Tech game just taking it on his own and getting those first downs and breaking tackles on his own. And you saw a lot of that, in that game. And I think that was a good sign for South Carolina. And I kind of been wondering, and we saw him a lot on Saturday night. I'm wondering if Matt Fuller's carry is going to continue to grow and get more, because when you watch him, it seems like even when something's not there, like he's going to find a way to get some type of positive yards on it, 1 or 2 or 3 yards. Like he always falls forward. And you kind of saw some packages for him against Missouri, where kind of a 2 running back package where he was in there. Then you also saw him on that long drive, on that 9-minute drive to pretty much end the game for South Carolina. He was the main back that was in there. So I think bye week probably comes at a good time for that, to see if they can kind of work his way into that rotation even more. And then from an offensive line standpoint, Rodney Newsom got the start at center, and I wonder if that's the way to go, just because I think he struggled at guard against Virginia Tech, but he's been pretty solid at center. So I'm interested to see there what they do. And then, do they kind of change anything up on the offensive line this week? Tree, I think you still got to kind of find a way to get in there. And you also saw Trevon Ball really, and it's then surprising for Trevon Ball, but you just saw him kind of just showing a lot of energy and a lot of, kind of just that, I guess, kind of like a nastiness almost on that offensive line, which was good to see for South Carolina. So, and kind of to your point on the defense for South Carolina, we talked about coming into that game that, the key was stopping the run. Kentucky was going to try to get that run going. You saw that in that first drive with Seth McGowan and Dante Dowdell. I think they want to do everything they can to get Cutter Boldy comfortable in that game. And as soon as South kind of figured out what to do on the run to stop the run and get after Cutter Boldy, it was kind of over from there, because then Brian Thomas, Dylan Stewart, JT Gear, all those guys kind of started to feast a little bit. And Kentucky's got a big offensive line from a size standpoint, but I thought maybe South kind of had the speed kind of off the edge to get there, and you saw that. And I thought the secondary really had a good game too, just because it seemed like there were times even when Cutter Boldy had time to throw the ball, I mean, there was nowhere to throw the ball, and Kentucky's got some issues at wide receiver, but South Carolina's secondary did a really good job in that game.
Yeah, that's because Kentucky's wide receivers start for Nebraska and Ole Miss.
Yeah.
All right, so let's start with the secondary. Obviously, there's a lot to unpack there. But just the depth at safety. Mm-hmm. Like DQ Smith missed a Missouri game. I thought they missed him just because of the poor tackling. Clearly, South Carolina worked on tackling quite a bit after the Missouri game. And, DQ Smith was back. I thought South Carolina, one adjustment I noticed was kind of bringing one of those safeties down in the box instead of playing 2 high safeties. And I thought that really allowed the linebackers and the defensive line to just eat, because they had to account for that extra defender in the box. But I've really been impressed by the play of Gerald Kilgore, to the point to where I'm wondering, do they continue to ride with Peyton Williams at that other safety, but David Busey's playing, Gerald Kilgore's playing, South Carolina's playing 4 guys at safety, and there does not appear to be a drop-off.
Yeah, I think so. And you mentioned David Busey as well. Like, he's one that as soon as he got in the game the other night, he came kind of blitzing off the edge and came really close to making a nice play, but really kind of affected the play. So I think safety depth, that was something that we thought was going to be really good to start the year, and it's been pretty solid overall. And I think Gerald Kilgore has been a very nice surprise there. Like, he's one that I thought he could get into the rotation, but he's just been a playmaker these first few through these going into this bye week. Like, that pick was had to be a quick reaction on that play, on that interception, and you kind of see, and Shane Beamer mentioned his quarterback background, where he was able to kind of weave through the I guess Kentucky's offense to find a way to score. So safety depth has been really good there, and I think it's just kind of the emergence of David Busey, that him and Gerald Kilgore to go along with Peyton Williams and DQ Smith. And I think you're right about what they missed with DQ Smith in that Missouri game, just from an experience factor. He's been against this Missouri offense multiple times, and then also just a tackling factor, which from a tackling standpoint, I thought it was much better against Kentucky. They still had a few missed tackles, but it was obvious that they made some type of adjustment, that it was much better on Saturday.
All right, so at corner, you get Judge Kilgore back. He played 18 snaps against Kentucky. But the great news is he should be back in the starting lineup against LSU with Brandon Cisse. You keep Jalen Kilgore at nickel. Then you got Bakari Swain as your third cornerback, and that pushes Miles Norwood to your fourth cornerback, which is really, I think, what he's best suited for. At least at this point of the season, he tends to get picked on when he comes into games. Missouri picked on him. Vanderbilt picked on him. Mm-hmm. Kentucky, they got him caught up in a crossing route one time, which was pretty tough. You'd about get anybody caught up in that. But now with him back, it gives you, with Collier back, he's your best corner. That gives you more flexibility, more options. You can give Kilgore a rest. You can go to a dime package and have Cisse at nickel with Bakari Swain and Judge Collier out there. And you can put Kilgore at safety and move a DQ Smith or Gerald Kilgore up into the box. Mm-hmm. I think, just the added the added depth at cornerback really gives South Carolina a lot more flexibility, and really what they wanted going into the season. And then, of course, Judge Collier until Saturday night had only played one quarter of football in the first 4 games.
Yeah, and I think the bye week kind of comes at a good time for him too, where it kind of timed perfectly for him, where he could get some reps in a live game situation against Kentucky, and then kind of have the bye week to get even more back into a full, kind of his full health. So I think that's huge. And again, like you mentioned, it goes back to what we talked about before the season with the versatility that this secondary can bring, and now with Judge being back, that kind of comes back a little bit. It still kind of stayed the same a little bit. You didn't see too much, moving around or anything like that. It kind of just inserted Bakari Swain into the lineup. But I think Swain is going to be one too now with what he's been able to do so far. Like, they're going to have to find ways to continue to get him. And they rotate heavily at that cornerback spot. Like, you'll see Bakari Swain's still going to play plenty too. And Judge and Brandon Cisse are going to play plenty too. But now it's just even more depth there that you can kind of, maybe last. If there's somebody that has to go down for a while, there's somebody, you got still got the good depth there at really every position. That goes into what we were just talking about with that safety depth too. Like, they can kind of manage with a few guys going down if they have to. Obviously, you don't want to, but if that situation comes about, that depth has now kind of been built to where they'll be ready to go.
No doubt. Clearly, you're looking at also Kendall Daniels Jr. playing on special teams. Mm-hmm. Donovan Darden playing on special teams. I wonder I think primarily those guys are going to be special teamers. But when you move up to that edge group, and I don't want to discount DeMarcus Leach because he played some cornerback as well. Mm-hmm. So that really, you got 5 guys at corner. Kendall Daniels, if he continues to come on, that gives you 5 guys at safety. You look at JT Gear, you look at Desmond Umeozulu, who's coming on. Like, let's not make light of Kentucky's offensive front. Okay, yes, Connor Boley, inexperienced, but Kentucky's offensive line had the 3rd most combined starts of any offensive line in FBS. Okay, this was no pushover. This was not completely rebuilt. This was not 4 guys that had never started before, like at LSU. This was a legit offensive line, and after the first 2 drives, South Carolina dominated them up front. Nick Barrett, Montel Goodwine, Devontae Miles got the most run he's had this season. Troy Pikes in there as well. Gabriel Brownlow-Dendy limited because of the injury, and then you got off to the big lead, so you really didn't need to play him as much, but he still continues to flash. That defensive tackle group is continuing to come on, Alex.
Yeah, absolutely, and that's kind of the keys that we were talking about before the season. That defense tackle group need to come on, continue to come on, and you've seen some flashes of them throughout the game. I thought, I think I've mentioned this on here with you before. Like, Brownlow Dendy, like, he's been pretty good to start the season for South Carolina. Like, he, maybe not one that's going to fill up the stat sheet. But he's one that he's going to affect the game just because of the attention that he brings and, absorbing double teams and stuff and things like that. So, I think he's been really good. Nick Barrett's been pretty solid overall. And then Monkel Goodwin, I think, is off to a really good start, too. So that D tackle room, and then you mentioned Devontae Miles, too. So that D tackle room, I think, has kind of come along as what you wanted. And you kind of mentioned those freshmen, like, it's crazy. Kendall Daniels already looks the part. Like, he looks the part of a Torian Gray safety. Like, he looks like you see the size. Like, obviously, I'm sure it's just the getting the reps and, the mental part of the game and all of that. But, physically, that guy looks the part. And I figured he was going to play a part on special teams just because of that. And I think, and then Buddy Mack was also out. So he was one that is a big special teams performer for South Carolina. So I think that kind of helped Kendall Daniels get on the field. But Donovan Darden, too, like, he's another one that already looks the part. And I wonder as the season goes on if he's one that kind of gets a little bit more reps at linebacker, too. But they kind of got their rotation with what they want there right now. So you're going to see those guys continue to play special teams. And, I mentioned this yesterday on the message board. Like, you've seen that under Shane Beamer. Like, these guys, these freshmen play, and that's something that helps them get ready to not only play special teams more in the future, but then also from a position standpoint. So I think you're going to see, those freshmen continue to be out there because AJ Holloway's been out there. Mike Tyler's been on the return team. So that you're going to see a lot of that. And I think that's good for this freshman and good for South Carolina to get those guys ready.
All right. So here's the question to me on Donovan Darden. Is he a linebacker or is he an edge? Because after everybody saw his senior film and saw him at the Shrine Bowl, he wound up being the number one rated prospect in that class. Mm-hmm. Okay. And he was an edge guy. And I know he's not as big as he's going to be, but I just wonder, because Jaron Willis, he's still not getting very much run. It's mainly those three guys. Who, by the way, Fred Johnson and Justin Okoronkwo, I thought they looked like really good SEC starting linebackers. They looked like NFL guys to me. Sean Murphy, I thought, had a good bounce-back game. Maybe Darden emerges as the fourth linebacker, but 6'4", I got to imagine he weighs more than 225 now. With that speed coming off the edge on third down, it could be pretty formidable for South Carolina. And Anthony Addison played a little bit as well.
Yeah. And kind of to your point on the linebackers, like, the thing is all those linebackers can come back for South Carolina too. It's not like they're losing anybody. Like, Okoronkwo's got years of eligibility left. Same for Fred, Sean Murphy too. Like, there's those guys can come back, and let's just say that all three of those guys do come back. Like, that's your linebacker core for next year too. So and does Donovan Darden keep growing? Like, you kind of saw it both. You could see it both ways coming out of high school. Like, you could see, like, man, he'd be a pretty good edge. But you could also see, like, he did some really good things at linebacker. Like, there's a reason that everybody at the Shrine Bowl kind of bought into the linebacker hype because he did some good things. And so maybe, like, if he keeps growing, and keeps that speed, like, I think he could be a really good edge prospect. Like, he and Anthony Addison could be and Quay Dodd for the future could be those guys. Like, that's something that's really kind of been intriguing me, and something I'm going to be tracking through the rest of the season to see how he looks from a growth standpoint. But he showed in high school that he can do that edge too, and I just wonder, if he keeps on growing, is that something that they're going to seriously look at? And I think it kind of depends on what the edge room looks like after this season, and things like that. Who they get, who they lose. Like, it could be one where they just see this. He's got the potential, and he just has grown too much and gets into that edge room. I could see it.
Well, let's not discount Quay Dodd either. He looks just like you'd draw one up.
Yeah.
In the dictionary under high potential edge rusher. High Potential, by the way, one of the best shows on TV on ABC. I'm not getting anything to plug that, but it's funny and intriguing. Quay Dodd, Anthony Addison, Darden, I'm still not so sure. Tayshawn Austin's not an edge rusher. Jaylen Brown's redshirting, coming off injury. George Wilson, the same. He'll be back. Dez, you'll be back. Dylan Stewart will be back. This is the end of the line for JT Gear and Brian Thomas Jr., but there's a lot of guys. Plus, there's the portal.
Mm-hmm.
So I think, they're in really good shape there. And I wouldn't be a bit surprised to see South Carolina add a high school edge rusher in this class before all is said and done. All right, so the defense, great performance. Really outside the tackling against Missouri, they've been good enough all year. It really wasn't their fault they couldn't score against Vanderbilt. Vanderbilt did take advantage of the youth and inexperience at linebacker with all of the eye candy stuff that they do. Credit to them. All right, offensively, we talked about it. It was good. LaNorris Sellers, I think he only threw it 14 times, 11 for 14. He was South Carolina's leading rusher as well. And therein lies the rub, is the run game is still not going. They did have 3 rushing touchdowns. They creased Kentucky for Rasul Faison on his 2 touchdown runs, and then Matthew Fuller from 1 yard out, but really no explosives in the run game. The offensive line continues to struggle. They replaced Josiah Thompson with Tree Babalade at left tackle. And quite frankly, I thought when you had Tree at left tackle, Shed Surratt at left guard, Newsome at center, who I do like at center.
Mm-hmm.
He's a left-handed center. He snaps it with his left hand. I don't know if a lot of people caught that, but he has no problem with that. And then Trevon Ball at right guard and Marquis Anderson, God bless his heart. Marquis banged up a couple of times, had to be helped off the field. He just cannot stay away from injuries. And then when you move Tree to left tackle because Casey Henry was out, you brought in Jatavius Shivers, and I really thought that was the best looking offensive line I've seen all year at South Carolina, was those guys. Now, clearly Casey Henry's been the best offensive lineman, but is it time to say, hey, Josiah, I think we're just going to let you stand over there and rest a while?
It seems like it's kind of getting close to that point. That there's been, I think he's gotten off to a little bit of a slow start this season, but and then it gets to the point where with Tree Babalade, like, excuse me, I don't think you're gonna we've talked about it in the preseason. Like, you got to find a spot for him, and maybe left tackle is that spot, especially with with Kaysen being out, and they put Jatavius Shivers in at right tackle, who. Now, I think, like I say it all the time, like Jatavius Shivers, one that every time he gets in, it seems like some positive things happen for Carolina offensively. And he was really good the other night when he got in there. And I think, those interior spots, I think, are probably pretty set going out of this bye week. I think you feel pretty good about Newsome being at center, and then Shed Surratt at left guard and Trevon Ball at right guard. Because you kind of mentioned Kaysen's probably been the best offensive lineman, but Trevon's probably a very close second. Like, he's been pretty good, really good to start the season too. So I think it's just the tackle spots that could be pretty interesting to watch, see how they form. Like, what I think Tree's probably going to be in there. It's just a complete guess on my part. Like, I feel like Tree's going to be in there. Like, I feel like you just had to put him in there. And, the question will be, like, if Kaysen Henry's healthy, is that going to be at right tackle for Tree, or is that going to be at left tackle? Like, I feel like you got to put him in there, and we'll see on Kaysen Henry. But, I mean, at the very least, you got a Jatavius Shivers who's right there waiting for those tackle spots that he can come in and has proven pretty much so far that he can come in and pick up where those guys left off.
I mean, I never thought I would say this because he's regressed from his freshman season, but Josiah Thompson may be the 4th tackle on this team, the way he's performing. I mean, you got to give it to Casey Henry, who has been consistent. Tree, when he's come in, has been consistent, and Shivers. Now, to be fair, according to PFF, Thompson did have his best game in pass protection against Kentucky, but I don't even think Carolina gave up a pressure to Kentucky. Their defensive front was porous in the pass rush, but Alex, is it the system? Is it the fact that you're on your third center? I mean, look, you're not saying this, but I'm saying this. Lonnie Teasley, do you actually know what the hell you are doing coaching the offensive line? How do you go through three centers and Tree Babalade did not even scratch until the Missouri game? Like, he didn't even play against South Carolina State. Okay? Maybe it was Vanderbilt he played, but I know he didn't play against South Carolina State. And he didn't play against Virginia Tech. Maybe there's some internal reason for that we don't know about, but is the scheme complicated that Mike Shula's put in? Because South Carolina struggled against everybody in the run game. I think against Virginia Tech, that's the most explosives they've had in the run game in any game this year.
Yeah, I mean, they've got to get more explosive in the run game because, I mean, you can maybe do what you did against Kentucky, but when you go in and play in Oklahoma or LSU, and you make yourself one-dimensional, it's going to make things really hard for LaNorris Sellers and this passing game to get going. And to your point on some of the pass protection thing, they've been pretty good in pass protection, or decent in pass protection. They're still having some free rushers get in there, and there's some times where LaNorris Sellers has got to get rid of the ball. But I think they've got to find their best five for the offensive line, and really maybe the best five who are the best run blockers and give them the best in their run game, because I think you kind of figure it out with LaNorris Sellers in the pass game. Like, LaNorris can get out of most sacks or free rushers. So I think they've got to find the five that give them the best. And then there are a few times too that you go back and look at the game, like the running backs just either missed the hole that were there, or if sometimes there's just maybe a tight end missing a block or something. So, and that's not me excusing the offensive line play. Like, the offensive line play has to be better, but there are some times too where it just feels like they're just missing opportunities from a run game standpoint, and they've got to find a way. It's got to improve, because that's why I wonder if Matt Fuller maybe gets a few more carries, because, like I said, he finds a way to get some positive yards every time. So that's a bye week. That's got to be a top of the board bye week key for South Carolina to get things going in the run game, because it's going to be a tough stretch through these next 5 games if they don't get it figured out offensively.
No doubt about it, Alex. South Carolina did run some outside zone. Mm-hmm. At least they tried to, and the offensive line blocked it really well, but the wide receiver didn't pick up a guy coming in. It's a 1 or 2 yard gain. To me, I think Rasul Faison is a more outside zone, outside run guy. South Carolina's mostly run right up the middle. There was more zone read. I think there was a conscious effort by LaNorris Sellers to read it and pull it, which we didn't see against Missouri, probably because he's coming off of that mild concussion, and you didn't want him to go out with a hit again, because you actually led going into the fourth quarter of that game before, you just couldn't make it happen. But I agree on Fuller. I mean, he is emerging out of the pack more than Oscar Attaway, more than Jawan Howell, who is, just an enigma, really, when you look at the physical tools. But maybe he is the guy. There's a theory that you won't, because defenses now are just not great tackling defenses because it's an offensive game. You need that big physical running back that can run through contact and break tackles like Rocket Sanders did. Now, I do think South Carolina blocked it better last year. I like the scheme better. Plus, you had Torricelli Simpkins, who's an NFL guy. But they got to find some answers. And, I mean, what can Mike Shula do during this bye week? What can South Carolina do with an open date and then the next week of game prep for LSU to unlock this offense, which still does not have a 400-yard game under Mike Shula? I mean, it's just still a lot of vanilla, and it just seems like you just don't see a play that works. You don't ever see him come back to that. It's like they run it once and then they just move on.
Yeah, and I think we've talked about this on here before. Like, when you look at how defenses are playing in South Carolina, it feels like there's just way too many people in the box defensively for South Carolina. That's something that even, when the offensive line does block a play up well, like, it feels like those linebackers are still kind of sitting there waiting for that inside type of zone run. So, I think you still got to find ways to spread a defense out. And I think you do that with LaNorris Sellers running the ball like the way he did against Kentucky on those zone reads, because it hadn't feel like he had pulled too many on the zone reads. And I know that's probably because of the way teams have been playing it, but I think you still try to pull it if you're Sellers, because you can beat a linebacker to the corner. You can beat a defensive end to the corner. Like, I think that's something that the more you kind of spread the defense out, the more those inside runs are going to help, and with Fuller or whoever it may be at running back. So I think that's what they got to do, get some things figured out from, find the best 5 offensive line that you feel that they are, and let those guys roll through the bye week to get that continuity and chemistry together. And for most part, all those guys have continuity and chemistry, but that the same 5 of them just continue. Like, I think you want to see the tight ends maybe get a little bit more involved in the pass game, because they're so good out in that flat. Like Maurice Brown, like, you think you probably want to see a little bit more of him, because that guy, he'll run through you. Like, you saw what he did on that kickoff. Like, which it was crazy that one even got questioned for targeting, because it wasn't even close for the most part. But I mean, get him more involved, get Brady Hunt, who's been really good, more involved, Michael Smith, get those guys out in the flats, because that helps spread that defense out. And those guys have been pretty good so far. And then let Dre Jacobs, Nick Carver, and those guys continue to do some things. And you even saw in that Missouri game, they kind of let Brian Rowe go in motion and catch that ball out in the flat. And he made a nice little one-handed catch. He'd be really good in that just because of his speed and athleticism. So just more spread it out a little bit, get that defense, get more people out of the box.
I mean, I completely agree. And I think you got to have some counters off of that as well. Like, we've only seen the little triple option play like once or twice all year. Dow Loggins, it was like 4 games in a row. They would run it and fake the run, and there was a different pass play every time off of that.
Yep.
Like, I think against Texas A&M, it was a throwback for a touchdown. Against Oklahoma, they hit Joshua Simon on the sideline. He rambled in for a touchdown, but it's like every single time there was a counter and a different pass play. And we just don't see that this year. And hopefully, they can self-scout and then figure out what really works, like Dow Loggins did after that open date last year before Texas A&M. They really figured it out. But, man, with 4, 5, 6, 10, and 13 coming up, you better figure it out.
And I think one of the biggest things they got to kind of improve on is being better in early downs offensively. Being better on first down, because it feels like there's been too many times where they get an inside run for 1 yard or 2 running. I mean, technically you're ahead of the chains, but you still want more just because you want to make that second down an easier play, that third down an easier play. Like, it feels like they've slowly been better about not being on these predictable third downs where they're third and longs, but it still needs to improve. And I think first down, maybe do a little bit of play actions off that, because it does feel like they like to run the ball a lot on first downs, some of those play action types of things to get them just moving in early and ahead of the chains.
I mean, I also agree with you on the tight ends, but to me, surprisingly, Brady Hunt has been the worst tight end blocking.
Yeah.
Like, I'm for like more cowbell. I want Maurice Brown, because he's going to ring somebody's bell every single play. And Jordan Dingle, I think he's been better than advertised, which I always thought he was underutilized at Kentucky. But then I really think you got to get Michael Smith going. Outside of Nicholas Harbor, this guy is probably the second biggest freak on the team.
Yeah,
What do you think about that?
Yeah, that's been a little surprising that he hadn't gotten going as much. Like, I thought he could be one that, especially once you get into the red zone, he can be kind of a problem. Kind of how LSU uses Trey Green at tight end, like kind of almost like a mismatch on a nickel or a corner. Like, I feel like he can be one that can be really a mismatch in the red zone. And maybe that's something they want to do more and haven't had too much opportunities, because once they get into the red zone, they've been especially Kentucky, like they actually found some run success in the red zone when they handed off to Russell Faison. But I think he's one that he can be a problem over the middle, just because I think he could be a mismatch nightmare. Like, I don't know who you want to put on him. Like, if you have a Nick and Moore, you can put on him, but and not a whole lot of teams have that. Like, he can just really, with that size and really he's got good enough speed that he can be a mismatch for something where, like, even for a short 3 or 4 yard gain to get a first down, like he's something I think they need. I'm really interested to see if they want to get him more involved. So I think he can be just, again, I keep saying it, but he's a mismatch issue for defenses.
All right, so let's put a bow on it. So out of all the returning wide receivers, like I felt from what I was hearing, what you guys were putting out on the BigSpur.com, the two freshman receivers were going to be Donovan Murphy and Brian Rowe. That has come to fruition thus far. Mm-hmm. But out of the returning wide receivers, if you would have said who's going to become the go-to wide receiver before the season, I would have said Mazeo Bennett or Nick Harbor. But it is becoming Vandrevis Jacobs. We've talked about the potential, the high ceiling, the natural talent. Internally, he was doing everything, but he didn't always have the consistency and the work ethic. And one of the core values is, effort in practice. Practice matters. But now we're seeing it, and we're seeing a comfort level between and the chemistry developing between LaNorris and Vandrevis Jacobs. But man, I really think this team needs Mazeo Bennett to come on. He has been MIA in the first 5 games, and I would have just never in a million years dreamed that.
Yeah, that wouldn't have been something I would have guessed would happen beginning of the season. But I think some of that may be the emergence of Brian Rowe, just being that they're in similar spots. Like, I think, Brian Rowe, just his athleticism and his speed is something that you got to get on the field just because of what he can do. And, I think that's a little bit of that. And, maybe it's just some of the kind of overall struggles of the offense have maybe kind of hurt Mazeo too. But, I think I probably would guess the biggest part of that is just the emergence of Brian Rowe, just because they're same type of positions. And they rotate there, and Mazeo has been playing. And, you did see more even of Jared Brown this past game, which I thought was a good sign, because he can be a guy in the kind of that quick screen game. And they tried to do it a little bit, didn't get too much, but Mazeo can kind of do some of that too. So I'm interested. That's something I'm watching to see, how much more they get him involved. But I think they've kind of really kind of not solidified. They're still kind of, it seems like they're figuring that out. But, the main guys in that rotation are really starting to emerge with, Nick Harbor, Dre Jacobs, Donovan Murphy, Brian Rowe, and the rest of those guys. Like, you'll see Jared Brown in there too. So I think you'll still be seeing Mazeo Brown, but that's something to really keep an eye on.
No doubt, Alex. I can't thank you enough. So tell me, what are your plans on Saturday? Are you just going to get in the recliner and have some food brought in and just relax and watch games, or are you watching games with your posse, or what's the deal?
I may have friends over to watch some football. It's going to be nice just to be able to kick back and not have to worry about battling traffic to Williams-Brice Stadium to get to the press box or all that. But whole bunch of looks like it's going to be a pretty decent slate this week. I mentioned that Clemson game is going to be one to watch, but it's going to be pretty relaxing. Just kind of sit back and enjoy football the whole Saturday.
All right, so Alabama and Vanderbilt. Are you really buying Vanderbilt? I mean, there were people. Josh Pate was saying it should be a top 10 matchup. He's completely bought in, but he is living in Nashville. I don't know if that's propaganda. I mean, I have to say, though, this is not your daddy's Vanderbilt team. They are 5-0. You know, you got that one.
Yeah.
And you got the biggest Florida State-Miami game maybe since the 90s this week.
Yeah, with Vanderbilt, the one I'm interested to see what matchup there is Alabama's offense versus Vanderbilt's defense. Vanderbilt's offense is just kind of humming. Like they've got that system figured out with Jerry Kill and those guys, and Diego Pavia, and they have their identity and they run it and they execute it at a very high level. I feel like they're going to have some success. Obviously, it probably will be their biggest test going against Alabama, but I think I'm ready to see Ty Simpson going against that Vanderbilt defense. Vanderbilt's got some players defensively, but what can they what do they have going for Ryan Williams and the rest of those guys for Alabama? So that's kind of the matchup that's really interesting to watch. And that Florida State Miami game is going to be really interesting. I think going into the season, I was kind of in see it to believe it mode with Miami, but they've kind of proven it so far that they've been really good. That defense I think defensively they've been really good, and Carson Beck has pretty much been solid too. I didn't know what to expect going from Cam Ward to Carson Beck, but he's been pretty solid for them so far. They've got some nice wins under the belt, and it'll be another test. And I'm not sure who to go with there. I'm probably leaning Florida State there, but wouldn't be surprised one bit if Miami wins that game either.
All right, so in the swamp, last week, the pit boss in Notre Dame at Arkansas, blowout city. He gets fired. Bobby Petrino. By the way, hey, Shane Beamer, I think you did work with the pit boss at Georgia. Yeah. Might be something to consider there. Texas coming into the swamp. Billy Napier, 1-3. Texas is number 9. Florida's defense is playing really well. I kind of nailed this on my pick on Friday. They had the head ball coach on down there. It's like, our defense has been really good. Maybe maybe need to work on teaching the defense to score a little bit since the offense is struggling so much. And so I said the same thing about South Carolina going to the Kentucky game, and they get essentially back-to-back defensive touchdowns, and then they get a short field later for 21 points off turnovers. If Billy Napier goes to 1-4, Scott Strickland, he's got his extension. Billy Napier, though, $64 million buyout. So I'm going to say this. Not a lot of y'all realize this, but those Bull Gators down there, I got because of a connection to one of Steve Spurrier's friends as a Gamecock that I know personally. I got to hang out with some of those guys. Some of them, they live on their own island and they take their little plane and just fly in. Okay, $64 million is not a big deal for them. They can get the boosters. The Florida Athletic Association's the model. They were the first one to be a private entity from the university. So they can buy Billy Napier out without it costing the university a penny. If he goes to 1-4 and then you got a bye week and then you got at Texas A&M and you got Ole Miss, Florida State, and some others. I mean, Florida could be staring at a 5-7, 4-8, maybe even a 3-9 season if that thing comes off the rails. Does Billy, when does Florida move on from Billy Napier, or do they ride it out?
Yeah, that's the question. Like, how bad does it have to get middle of the season or in the season for Florida to make a move? And yeah, I don't know if I'd put it past Florida if they lose this weekend and then what do they have or Texas A&M after that. I think I mean they could be. The record could not be good in these next 2 weeks. I mean, it could easily be 1-5 after these 2 weeks. So, do they make the move? Like, I would not be one bit surprised if they're 1-5 and they make the move, just because it does feel like it is coming anyway, regardless of, and maybe even if they have a good end of the season, just because DJ Lagway hasn't been the DJ Lagway of last year so far. Like, it's been a struggle there, and the defense has been solid, but offensively they just can't get anything going. So I know, unless just things just big time turn around offensively, I don't know how Florida is going to have to manage that schedule, because you still got Georgia, you still got Ole Miss, you still got Florida State. Like, it's pretty brutal schedule.
No doubt about it. Alex, great stuff. Oh yeah, you're right, Christopher. It was Jackie Young and not Chelsea Gray with the 30. My bad. Alex, great stuff as always. Thanks for being with us. Enjoy your first of 2 Saturdays off. And then, I don't know, batten down the hatches. It looks like a lot of rough waters ahead for Gamecock football, but it looked that way last year, and we saw what happened. Shane Beamer's teams just find that magic, and they continue to improve. Let's hope that remains the trend this season. So thanks as always, and we'll look forward to catching up with you down the road.
Always enjoy being on. See you next time.
All right, that was Alex Jones from the Big Spur. And so it is the Phoenix Mercury who traded Brittany Griner in the WNBA Finals. Asia Wilson, I think, making her 4th finals in the last 5 years, 4-time MVP. They really had it going on. But again, so Napheesa Collier, she had a press conference yesterday afternoon, and she was very critical of the commissioner of the WNBA, Gino Auriemma, unsurprisingly, also was asked about the style of play. And I agree, like I've said in women's basketball, okay, college and in the WNBA, and now a lot more eyeballs are on the game, even though a certain player is not playing. And her team was still one made basket in regulation from going to WNBA finals. And they didn't have Sophie Cunningham either. But Aaliyah Boston got hosed last night. Like, just because she's bigger and she goes up against a smaller player for a loose ball and the smaller player falls to the ground, that's not a foul. That took her off the floor. That was her 5th foul. That was a big deal. Okay, the Gino Auriemma said it. Napheesa Collier said it. And look, I thought that one foul they made a big deal about, Napheesa Collier, that really wasn't a foul. But I know she wanted it because she's, was a front runner for the MVP most of the season in the WNBA. But I think they need to find themselves a new commissioner and a new head of officials, because it's like Gino said, it's not even the officials. It's just the style of play that the league office has said this is how we want you to call it. There's no freedom of movement. There's no ability to cut. And it's like the NBA of the 90s when Pat Riley went to the Knicks and they started playing football on a basketball court. And until the NBA got to the playoffs this year, the WNBA their regular season was more physical than the NBA's regular season. Now, a lot more games in the NBA, but the playoffs, it was basically strap it up because you're getting bumped, you're getting hand checked, you're getting pushed, you're getting hit hard away from the ball on screens, and we're just not calling it. It's just going to be play on. And I think Caitlin Clark needs to get in the weight room. I think she needs to get tougher and stronger. And they should call it just like they call it for every other player for her. But you can't have her missing half the season and all the playoffs. Think of what that playoff series would have been like with, Sophie Cunningham's injury was different. Caitlin Clark just got banged around. And look, she's chippy. She does it too. She likes to talk and she's kind of passive aggressive. She likes to get away with stuff. And so sometimes she probably does have it coming. I mean, I remember my dad telling me when I was a little boy, Red Auerbach had a saying, you don't give them a layup, you make them bleed. You put them on their backside on the ground if they come in the paint. And we saw it in the NBA in the 80s when Kevin McHale clotheslined Kurt Rambis. Nobody got ejected, no fines, no technical fouls, just 2 free throws and play on. Even after fist fights with Dr. J and Larry Bird, or Kareem and Larry Bird, because Larry Bird talked more junk than anybody in the NBA. But it's a different time now. Okay. And I stand with Napheesa Collier. They asked Asa Wilson about it. She didn't see it, but she, when they asked her about it on NBA Countdown, but then after the game, she said, hey, I'm riding with Fee on this. And so WNBA, and look, we know college women's basketball is coming up, and that is the most incompetent officiating of any sport, in my opinion. And look, there's a lot of teams that could win it this year, and South Carolina is certainly one of them. I think South Carolina is going to be better. They're going to be more talented. They'll be more consistent than they were last year. They will have more of a post presence than they had last year. And Tania Latson and Tessa Johnson are going to give Dawn Staley something she's never had. 2 wing players that can absolutely go off at any given night. And you got Joyce Edwards and Chloe Kitts and Medina Okot and Marion Dowda. And I think you're going to see improved post play from all of those players. And I think you're going to see the emergence of Maddie McDaniel at point guard, along with Raven Johnson, who I think is invigorated this year because she's back with her running mate, Tania Latson. So, UConn is going to be really good. Texas, they're going to try to muck it up. They're going to try to play just like Pat Riley played. Southern Cal, UCLA, they're still going to be great, even without Juju Watkins, Southern Cal. A lot of teams with a chance to win it. But in this WNBA Finals, hey, Commissioner, if you want to keep your job, clean it up. Don't allow star players to get the crap beat out of them and then you don't call fouls, and then you get a ticky-tack foul and you take one of the best players in the league off the floor. Aaliyah Boston, like 2 or 3 of those fouls should not have been called. Now, I'm not going to say it was egregious as that Iowa game in Dallas, because I was there. That was absolutely officiating malpractice. What they allowed to be done to Aaliyah Boston and versus what they called on Aaliyah Boston. And let's not forget, Caitlin Clark pushed off every single time she took a shot with her left arm, her entire junior season. And when they finally called it in the championship game, LSU ran them out of the gym. So officiating in women's basketball, get your stuff together. We're keeping it clean. If this was a patrons only, I would have given the earmuffs warning reference from Old School, which is now a really old movie. But if you hadn't seen it, go back and watch it. So that's going to be a wrap for me. And for the show, we're moving back to 10 a.m. Eastern. I appreciate everybody joining in. Still don't think there is a decision from Release Co. It was supposed to happen at 8 o'clock. I don't see it. I know Skim Milky would have already said you are a whatever McKenna Release Co. So we'll wait for that. But South Carolina's got plenty of other big-time recruits that have already visited. In October, more big-time recruits will be visiting, including the number 2 center in the country and maybe one of the top 3 players in the world, Fagan, will be visiting. South Carolina had 2 official visitors in this past weekend. Next week, hopefully we can get Lulu Kesson on. She's in New York City. Lulu, enjoy yourself and stay away from where ice is. All right, that's going to be a wrap for me and a wrap for the show. Appreciate everybody tuning in. This has been episode 1863. Hey, tonight will be the Garnet and Black Town Hall. Had to move it. It's open date. Plus, because of work, I have been unable to watch Addison play volleyball. And so I went to her volleyball game and then took her out to dinner last night and had a little daddy-daughter time. I love being a girl dad, and I'm always there supporting my girl. So until next week, we'll be back, same bat time, same bat channel. Hey, you can join Gamecock Pod Daily for a week as a VIP member, absolutely free. If you sign up today, you get 3 months free off an annual VIP subscription. And even if you just do a monthly subscription, you get a free week's trial. You can tune in to the Garnet and Black Town Hall tonight, where we'll be chopping it up on all things Gamecocks. So join us. If you're watching on X, go to the YouTube channel, hit the subscribe button, hit the like button, give us a rating. This will be up on wherever you get your podcast, Apple, Spotify, wherever. Join our growing Gamecock family. Until next week, Keith Allsep signing off. I hope the quality of the audio has been better this week. Leave some comments on that. And we'll be back to preview LSU and the Gamecocks next week. Until then, I'm out of here. God bless and go Gamecocks.